Absolutely, I sure can. So, welcome to today's Colorado Needs Assessment EPR Hauler informational interview. We're hoping that today will be um, able to answer some of your questions and kind of bring you a little bit inside the project to know why we're asking questions and what we're looking for. So, I'm going to introduce you to our team here. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Peter Hargreaves. So I am the Colorado manager for Circular Action Alliance. I've been working in the industry for about 18 years, much of that working directly with municipal governments and private sector providers.
Thank you. And hi, I'm Kate Bartelt. I work for HDR Engineering, and I am our sustainability and resiliency lead. I have a strong background in working on solid waste planning and looking towards the future. Also on our team is Sarah Edwards from Eunomia Research and Consulting, who will be joining us a minute late here, it seems, but has experience in EPR in particular and looking at how we go forward. So just a few Zoom tips. This session is being recorded. It will be housed on the Recycle Colorado homepage. So just a few tips, housekeeping today. So if you are joining us, if you can put yourself on mute, you can please hold your questions to the end, but we will be monitoring the questions that come in the chat bar. So really feel free to ask them as they come up and we'll be able to answer them. If you would like to come off mute and ask a question, you can use the raise the hand button, and Dan Basowski will be doing our moderating Q&A at the end of our session, and so you can come off mute then and be able to ask your question. If you can, we would love to know with your question, whether you give it live or type it in the chat, if you could list your organization and your name so that we can make sure to capture your question and then respond back to you if we can't answer it today. So here's our agenda for the conversation. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction on what is the overview of the Colorado Extended Producer Responsibility Law. We're going to talk about the timeline, specifically what we need from you, some summaries, and then there will be time at the end of the session for your questions and feedback. So with our welcome, I'm going to turn this over to Peter.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. Just if I can start by just saying a big thank you to Recycle Colorado for setting this up. Thank you to Liz and Ali. A huge amount of work has gone into this. And very much thank you to all of you that are joining today. I know you all have busy schedules, and I know that there was relatively short notice for this. So thank you very much for joining. If there are others in your organization, as Kate mentioned, this is going to be recorded. So certainly you can pass on that information if others are interested within your organizations. Next slide over. So Colorado signed its producer responsibility law for packaging and paper products into law in June of 2022. The objective of the law is really to improve recycling outcomes for, again, packaging and paper products in Colorado by doing things like expanding accessibility, ensuring a more uniform statewide recyclable list, encouraging better design decisions being made by producers, leveraging current systems and infrastructure, and improving things like promotion and education. This will mean in many cases and in many situations that we're going to be looking at expanding recycling servicing for packaging and paper products, which will create opportunities for service providers. Next slide over. So broadly, EPR laws place the responsibility on producers of products, so people like brand owners, retailers, first importers, to fund and or operate recycling programs. The general idea is that producers have a greater ability to prove outcomes through the decisions they make, whether that be through the design of products, how they invest in systems to collect and process materials, and the economies of scale they can get through those, and or how they engage end markets, meaning pulling materials for use in the products and packaging they make. Colorado currently is one of 4 states that have EPR laws underway. Others, including California, Oregon, and Maine, that have passed packaging EPR laws. Circular Action Alliance was selected as the producer responsibility by CDPHE. And in basic terms, just so that you understand, a producer responsibility organization is really a compliance organization that helps producers organize and meet their legislative requirements by working with all the key stakeholders to implement this new system. Next slide over. So we do have a relatively short timeline ahead of us. As I mentioned, after being selected in May, Circular Action Alliance immediately began the process to tender the needs assessment, and we awarded that contract to HDR and Eunomia. The needs assessment is an in-depth study that's meant to assess Colorado's existing recycling system and identify opportunities for growth and improvement to the system. It's meant to sort of provide the roadmap for the producer responsibility organization and inform the rulemaking process that CDPHE will be moving forward with. It's sort of the first building block of this new structure, and it's really important as a result that we make sure that we get this first piece right. So it is why we are reaching out to all of you to make sure that we can leverage your knowledge, your experience that you have on the ground. We must complete the needs assessment by January. So again, it's a pretty tight timeline. And there is a focus right now on making sure that we gather as much information so that in the later months towards January, we can start to analyze the data, we can start to model scenarios, and make sure at the same time that we're checking context and making sure that we're keeping stakeholders like yourselves informed along the way. You'll likely hear this multiple times today, but I want to make sure that I clearly say we understand that when we ask questions, you may not have all the information that we're seeking, but we're hoping that you are willing to participate and ensure that you can provide us with whatever information that you can. Next slide over. This is just a quick slide on who we are. Circular Action Alliance, we are a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3, established again to successfully implement EPR laws for paper and packaging. We were officially incorporated in December of 2022, representing 18 companies from food, beverage, consumer goods, and retail industry. So those companies are included on the slide in front of you. The organization seeks to provide a flexible platform for producers to meet the needs across different states and to create economies of scale by sharing resources, knowledge, and expertise. Our board members, we do have a separate board for Colorado, and that board includes members from General Mills, Mars, Swire, Walmart, Clorox, and PepsiCo. And we do also have 2 non-voting members that include the Colorado Beverage Association and Consumer Brands Association. We are in the midst right now of looking at potential additional appointments and are in the process right now of understanding where the gaps we have in diversity and skill sets are. Next slide over. Back to you, Kate.
All right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the team that's working on this needs assessment. So you know who's calling you and who's answering these questions with you. So HDR has over 65 years of experience in providing engineering, planning, design solutions for both private and public clients in Colorado. Our staff, which includes folks from across the United States, are our experts in these areas. We have our hauling expert team on this. We've got our experts in MRFs and looking through it. We're very proud to be partnering with Eunomia on this project, who brings 21 years of global experience in designing EPR policy and modeling how those systems work. So together, we're really bringing an operations and system-wide understanding with modeling and policy. And our team wouldn't be complete without representation from a lot of local folks. So we are happy to be supported by these other companies on the slide from Start Consulting to LBA, Bell and Associates, Griffin Environmental, who are really helping us tap into our Colorado resources and understanding the community and how it works within the state. So let's talk about the needs assessment in particular. So this is that first step that Peter was mentioning in developing the understanding of what's going on in Colorado's existing recycling systems and really looking to identify where are those opportunities for growth or improvement. And reiterating what Peter mentioned before, that this is really that roadmap for that PROS program plan and thinking about rulemaking going forward. So our objectives that we have in this project is really to try and understand and put measurement behind that existing system. And that's where you all as haulers play such a critical role in this conversation as you're collecting materials from generators, bringing them to their places to be processed. And that's why we really want to engage you in this conversation. We are really looking to get an understanding of Colorado's system as a whole. So regardless of if you're a large hauler or small hauler, representing rural parts of the state or urban parts of the state, we're really trying to get that snapshot of what's going on across the whole community. And our needs assessment is really looking to answer some of these following questions of what services are currently being provided, by whom and where. What is the performance level of that existing system? Is it accessible? Do you have high participation rates? Where are your recycling information at? What is the cost of the current system? Where do those materials that are being collected, where do they go for processing? And then finally, what are those local end markets? Do they exist? Is market development needed? And these really will all be part of thinking of how we go forward. So the needs assessment is an extensive look. It is set up under a system of elements, is what it's called under the process. So these are the different areas that we're looking at. So residential collection, service costs, demographics, collection, non-residential collection. And as you can see throughout this list, your hauling community and you all are providing some of these critical services. As Peter mentioned, the timeline for this needs assessment is very quick, and it was set forth in the statute. So these are dates that we have to be working towards meeting. So in the month of September, we're really working on data collection and stakeholder identification. In October, we're going to be analyzing data and checking that data with stakeholders, with yourself, making sure we captured that correctly. In November, we're going to be working towards developing and drafting that minimum recyclables list and starting that scenario thinking. Then in December, that draft needs assessment and stakeholder engagement will continue, moving towards that January of 2024 of that final needs assessment and scenario recommendations. So you can see that the bulk of this work of gathering data and pulling it all together is going to happen in the months of September and October. So it's a fast-moving project, and that's why reaching out to everyone is so important. So let's talk about the data that we're actually hoping to gather from you all specifically as haulers. So type of information we're going to be looking for is general contracting terms, cost, duration, escalators, some of those basic pieces about how you're operating and servicing communities. What are your service operation levels and frequency? Do you provide every other week recycling collection? Is it an opt-in or opt-out program? What types of materials are you collecting? Um, what types of service? Curbside drop-off, a combination? Are you covering entities as single families, or do you also include multifamilies? So really just trying to understand where operations are occurring and who has access to the system. And importantly, why do we need the data? It helps us provide data for our costing model to understand what it would take to bring Colorado up to a higher level of being able to provide accessible and equitable recycling to everyone within the state. And this model is what's going to help the pro determine the cost of ramping up the system and the infrastructure within the state. And we understand that the haulers are the backbone of our recycling infrastructure. You're providing this critical service for your community. And the specific data that we're asking for, we understand may be challenging because we're looking for true cost, system challenges, what's really occurring out in Colorado so that way we can best help provide infrastructure around the existing system to move the state forward in its recycling diversion. And why we think it's important for you all to participate now is that this information is going to really be important because this is going to be the base of what the pro is using moving forward. So we really want to ensure that this needs assessment captures what's going on and can help expand the system and the role that you're currently playing within the waste management. Data confidentiality, we know is going to be really important. So data that we collect from the hauling community will only be shared in aggregate as part of the final report. We won't be sharing anything based on specific hauling community names. Our project team has all signed a confidentiality agreement with CAA to ensure any unaggregated data will not be released, and that a non-disclosure agreement has been developed if your company wants to participate that way. But ensuring your data is safe and not shared in an individual way is part of our team's charge. And we understand that Colorado is unique in its geography, that we really want to ensure that we're talking to haulers in all 4 regions of the state, from the Front Range to the mountains to the western slope to the eastern plains. And to do this, we are planning on trying to interview haulers from various sizes and geographic locations, because we understand that these survey questions, that we have a lot that we'd like to ask you, and we think in an interview we can have a discussion and talk through them and hopefully get to a place where we feel comfortable in sharing that information. So our goal is to do interviews with a minimum of 3 large national haulers, 9 medium regional haulers, and 15 small haulers. So the next steps will be is Angelo on the HDR team will be reaching out to you to start scheduling those interviews. So he will be calling you, emailing many of you on this call either tomorrow or Monday to try and get those interviews scheduled. We're very flexible in how we can do that because we want to best meet your needs where you're at as far as timing and information sharing. If you would like to participate in the hauler survey and really want to make sure that you are contacted and you have an opportunity to share that, we would love to hear from you. So what I'm leaving up here on the screen is a QR code. This QR code sends you to a sign-up form, and you can identify what type of information you would like to be continued to be informed on in the project. And if you select the hauler option, then one of our team members will contact you to be able to have that conversation. The other thing is if you want to drop your email in the chat or email us directly afterwards, that would work as well. And so thank you for that part of the information. I'm going to pop up Angelo's contact information. So this is who is going to be calling you. It is coming from a 651 number, just so you know what that number is if it comes across your screen. And with that, we would be happy to answer questions that you have or expand upon information that we've shared here today.